Okay, record. All right, thanks for coming to Decoupling Drupal Commerce to multiply and scale the front end. My name is Matt Glaman. I am product lead at Centarro, and at Centarro, formerly Commerce Guys, we power e-commerce innovation through every stage of growth. We build Drupal Commerce, and e-commerce is our thing. So to start, I wanted to go through why you would decouple Drupal Commerce. That's an often question on when you should and when you shouldn't. One of the main reasons to decouple is if you need unique branding or localization for different markets. When you decouple, it allows different teams to control how a market's design and localization would work. So if you have markets between different countries or even different brands that are in the same region, but they have different design requirements. You may want to decouple if you need to reach a modern audience that shops through multiple devices. When you decouple, it makes it easier to support different front-end applications, such as the web, an Apple Watch, other smart devices, kiosks. A main reason for decoupling too is to scale for high demand. When you decouple, you remove some of the rendering bottlenecks that are associated with full stack applications. Like, this isn't just a Drupal problem, it's WordPress. It's anything where the backend is doing logic and presentation at the same time. So those are some of the reasons why you'd want to decouple. And now we'll go into when should you decouple. So you kind of meet some of those marks, but you don't know if you should quite yet. So as we said, consider decoupling when you need to separate the design and styles for each tenant in your application. So in Drupal, your theme can control the display for every tenant being like your store or brand that sells products. Using a little bit of code, you could actually switch the active Drupal theme based on the current store that the person is browsing. But now all of your design changes are tied to your main application, which means that if you need to deploy a design change for store B, it's going to affect the sales of store A just for that design change. A good example is Leica Geosystems. Leica Geosystems is a multi-tenant, full-stack Drupal Commerce installation built by Oomph, and this is not decoupled and is multi-tenant. So each region that they sell in has its own store and unique pricing. And we'll go through one product page real quick. So this is the BLK 360 in the United States. Here it is in France, and here it is in Japan. As you notice, the only thing that changed was the pricing. As you can see, it's in US dollars, euros, Japanese yen, but none of the design changed. So Leica Geosystems didn't need to decouple because the theming stayed the same. They were able to leverage the normal dynamic pricing available in Drupal Commerce and meet their needs. They could benefit from decoupling if each region did need customized branding or user interactions. Let's say they wanted to change, let's say the Japanese market had a different style of branding. This is where decoupling could be more beneficial because they can have more autonomy over how their part of the site looks. You should consider decoupling when the business wants to reach customers beyond their website. Now, this is the common thread now, the quote-unquote omni-channel, such as native applications, or now social media platforms are integrating e-commerce tools more and more. I know Pinterest has a few things. Facebook's making it so you can shop through their messenger. So by decoupling, you can explore these additional revenues for sales. One case study that I'd like to highlight is Eldamret, which is a food delivery service built on Drupal Commerce by 1x Internet. And they utilize a React Native mobile application that consumes a REST API from the site. This was the winner at the Splash Awards at DrupalCon Amsterdam in the e-commerce realm. So the main website is full stack Drupal. It's a normal Drupal site, but then they have the mobile app that allows you to manage your meals that's built in React Native and communicates to Drupal via a REST API, and I believe it's actually GraphQL. But LDM Rep can eventually move their main web application to a decoupled front end because they've already built the API. So they built a regular Drupal site, then they added an API on top to support multiple ways that you can consume the data, and they could now leverage that to build a decoupled front end at the same time. And you should also consider decoupling to meet demands of sales growth and high scale availability. Small e-commerce apps could be highly dynamic. You may not necessarily have even small sites can have that are highly dynamic, such as different pricing. You may have a small market, but there's a lot of different business logic that goes into your pricing rules. And when you have these different pricing rules, such as pricing by customer or pricing by region, normal caching patterns that content sites in Drupal take advantage of kind of fall apart. You can't use page cache. You can leverage dynamic page cache, but the Drupal render system can perform at scale, but kind of starts to teeter a bit, especially when working with the form API, because forms cannot easily be cached. So then there's a lot of rendering and a lot of logic, especially when you have anonymous users that can't hit a fully cached website. So that's a good reason to decouple. And that will bring us to Centarro's case study for MaxSmart. This is a picture of their homepage. MaxSmart built a grocery system business on Drupal Commerce and quickly scaled to 10 million euros in revenue. With Centarro, we took them to a fully headless platform to increase their performance and sales. So they went from a full stack Drupal Commerce site, and then we slowly moved them over to a fully decoupled instance. And this allowed them to scale and also launch in more markets. We started with full stack Drupal and form API submissions, then we decoupled the add to cart form, and then we finally went full decoupled. And this allowed us to scale to tens of thousands of concurrent customers. It also allowed us to provide third-party integrations. So instead of Drupal having to be the search index, they can pump that into a third-party search index that the front-end client talks to, but receives the data to be indexed from the back-end. So now their back-end Drupal Commerce site can focus on just serving carts and payment transactions. As they move into new markets, they can launch new sites without building another Drupal Commerce site. They just create a front-end, and then that marketing team can build it as they wish, and then plug it into their back-end, and they can scale out without having to reinvent the wheel. This year, that was a Drupal 7 site, their main site, but this year they're expanding into new markets on Drupal 8. They've been a long time supporter of Drupal Commerce and engaging with Centarro as the software vendor and not just a consultant. And through our partnership with them, they've helped us build a fully featured cross-border e-commerce platform. If you'd like to know more about what we're doing with MaxSmart and how you could actually take advantage of some of that, we're onboarding multiple customers right now to Centarro Commerce, which is going to be our open SaaS optimized for merchant collaboration. Open SaaS being as we run it, but it's open source and you can take your data with you. So if you have any questions about that, I have my email at the end, and some feedback would be great. So taking that, what is our vision for a decoupled multi-tenant e-commerce platform? Because that's been the trend here. The decoupling becomes more apparent as a need when you have multiple stores or brands within one site. And so when you have the stores, and reminder, a store could be a region, brand, or physical location. We have one client with 120 stores, and those are just physical locations in the United States. Each store is able to define its default currency. So if you have an Italian store, it can be euros. If it's a store in the UK, you can say it uses the English pound. You're also able to limit who can purchase for a store by limiting the billing and shipping countries per store. And then products can be assigned to each store So that way you can have products that are only allowed at specific locations, and that helps you control your catalog. One of the main components in here is price lists. Price lists allow you to have multiple currency and per store pricing. Price lists use conditions to evaluate. These can be also beyond just saying what store is for. It could be for user roles, the purchase quantity. So if somebody buys 5 of a product, they can get a specific pricing, and also start and end dates. The price list module was designed for a site with 15 million SKUs and price lists that contain up to and more than 300,000 SKUs at a time. One thing that we believe in the platform is that JSON API for standardized data consumption. I think everybody probably knows about JSON API now. It is a API specification that has been implemented in a Drupal module and is now part of Drupal core. One reason that I like that we chose JSON API is we didn't have to write code for building an API. We were able to just focus on the mechanics of how our API should work with our data model, not how to show it in a JSON blob and the ways that it should be interacted with from that point. Here's some, I wanted to just quick share a few things that we at Centarro have worked on that help make working with Drupal Commerce in a decoupled scenario easier. By default, JSON API doesn't let you do cross-bundle queries, so you couldn't just get all of your products in one site. So we did build the JSON API cross-bundles module. This allows you to get /products and also see all of your clothing and books at the same time, for example. We created the JSON API resources module. Currently, the JSON API module has no PHP API for extending the implementation, which was kind of a roadblock for us because we didn't want people to have to work with our Drupalisms over an HTTP API. So the JSON API resources module provides a method for creating custom resources and helps kind of flush out what the PHP API will be for extending Drupal's JSON API implementation. One of the outcomes from that module was JSON API Search API, and this lets you query your search indexes over JSON API. Previously, you could just do an entity query. Now you can at least leverage your custom search indexes, which means that you can query data from your Solar instance or Elasticsearch instead of just whatever you could query from the database. We also built the JSON API user resources module because in a decoupled e-commerce site, you have customers. Customers need to be able to register and change their passwords. The JSON API module by itself does almost nothing for account management besides edit your user fields. Decoupled applications require the user's registration, password resets, and updated passwords. This module provides that functionality that's currently missing in the API-first ecosystem for Drupal. And then finally, the Commerce API, which we announced last week or 2 weeks ago, and it's built on top of JSON API resources and ensures that for instance, our dynamic pricing capabilities work. So when you fetch products, you're able to get their resolved price based on their user role or location. It also provides a cart and checkout API. So the cart API allows you to interact with orders, not needing full administration permissions. So this way you can have anonymous users create carts, and the checkout API to do the most important part, take their money and then ship them their products. So there's all these components that make up the system. And with that, I would like to introduce the Centarro Commerce distribution. So as I said, Centarro Commerce is going to be an open SaaS we're offering. Open SaaS because we're building an open source Drupal distribution for this platform. And the Centarro Commerce distribution will be configured for a multi-tenant setup. It's going to have all the modules for API-first Drupal that let you meet your API needs. And it's going to come pre-installed and set up with OAuth, because OAuth is the industry standard for doing logins and authentication. And this is a PDF. I can't show the image, but I will share out these links. If you go to Centarro-commerce-demo.web.app. This is a React application that is interacting with a Centarro Commerce backend. And we're going to have some GitHub repos soon. So we'll have that distribution up on GitHub, just like OpenSocial has their Composer template on GitHub, and Acquia has Lightning on GitHub. We will have our Centarro Commerce Composer template. The React application will be up there. It's a Create React App skeleton. I do have some Gatsby.js themes in the works that will go up as well. And the stretch goal is to create a React and Redux bindings SDK. So when you build your first JavaScript application using React, some of the hard parts are already figured out for you for cart management. And those will be available at github.com/Centarro. And that's what I've got. So thank you. And if you have questions, let's chat. A little hard to do since we're not physically in a room, but I'll take note of my email. It's matt@centarro.io. If you could please provide some feedback, the URL is mid.camp/6319. And as a reminder, we are having the contribution day still. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. is going to be virtual. The information is on the website and will be led up by Amy June. Thanks. Are there any questions that anybody would like to ask?
I believe anyone that has a question can just enable their mic, turn it on, and you should be good to go.
Yes, is there gonna be like a Kickstarter distribution?
Can you repeat that one more time?
I ask if the distribution is going to be like what's the Kickstarter distribution for Drupal Commerce 2?
Like Commerce Kickstart. So not quite, because kind of. I'll say kind of, because Commerce Kickstart had two versions. The 1.x was just a like starter kit, and then the 2.x was a full-blown demo. So yes, it's kind of like Commerce Kickstart in the fact that there's the 1.x version where it provides a distribution of modules, and no, because it's not a full demo. It's more so to be as like a packaged platform that lets you get up and running with a headless e-commerce system.
Thanks.
Cool. Any other questions? All right.
I'm not seeing any questions in Slack or in the Zoom chat either.
Although I see Sheila shows you has your hand raised. Did you have a question?
Sheila's.
She was just stretching.
Our captioner, so yeah.
Oh, okay.
Matt, one thing that we had discussed in the planning retreat for the Centarro Commerce distro was the idea that the API could be self-documenting, right? So you'd essentially install the distribution, have a full JSON API, and then be able to point an application at that to basically navigate and browse the API. Is that right?
Yes, I should have added that. So there is a specification called Open API, and Open API is a mechanism for documenting your API and building documentation out of it, or even clients out of it. Matteo, who first created JSON API, the contrib module, has maintained the OpenAI modules, and those come pre-installed, and you could actually browse your documentation in a tool called Redoc. If you've worked with the Contenta CMS module at all, it uses the same, they use the same kind of documentation as well. I see Joe had a question about the modules being contributed. So Joe's question is, if any of the JSON API modules we've contributed are being considered for addition to Drupal core, and I would like to put that up as a big maybe. Parts of them will be. I've been through all of these all of this development. I have been talking to Wim, Gabe, and Matteo, since they're the API first maintainers, and had their support, and they've answered some of my questions along the way. JSON API resources was worked with in collaboration with Gabe. And my goal is to get as much of this into Drupal core as possible. I've got a giant list of core issues to work on for Drupal 9.1, since Drupal 9.0 will have no features. So I've got a busy summer schedule to try to improve Drupal core, so that way a lot of this can make it into Drupal itself.
Can I ask a question, Matt?
Yeah.
You hear me? Thank you for the presentation. Sounds great. I'm interested in the question, does it affect the normal HTML stores in Drupal Commerce in some way, or is it a parallel development, or does it affect it somehow?
So actually, it makes it better. So it won't hurt anything. But one way that it actually helped is in Commerce, we have we call it the availability manager, which lets you check if a product can be purchased. Previously, the add to cart form never really integrated with that. You had to use the stock module. And through the API work, we got that integrated at a data level layer. So if your product wasn't available at a store, you had to do like extra logic on your end to make sure it can be purchased, but now it just works out of the box. So a lot of the API work is improving the core feature set that a normal Drupal installation would look like. None of the decoupled work will ever take away from that. A lot of times it will just help strengthen its features.
And Matthias, there is
Okay.
there's the Commerce demo module in Belgrade theme that kind of installed out of the box will give you that Commerce Kickstart 2.x style demo at least, and then starting point if you just wipe out the demo data. The quickest way to kind of take a gander at that is to go to Simply Test Me, and then there's like a Drupal Commerce button like on the home page. If you just click that button, then it'll install the whole Belgrade demo store.
That's great.
Yeah, so yeah, like our focus, at least for what we're trying to build, like as a product out of Drupal Commerce, will be headless commerce applications. But the spillover impact will be that, like, as we make modules part of the system, their APIs will be improved, their feature sets expanded. And I know that Matt and Jonathan on the call have done a lot of work lately in like commerce shipping, just doing a lot of work to the module that improves it even for like a full stack usage. But specifically because our headless customers needed like a REST API for creating shipments, collecting shipping rates, all that kind of stuff.
But for my scenarios, my customer scenarios, for the time to come, there will be HTML-based stores. But the goal is to grow into the decoupled solutions over time, and I have to decide which way to go, because for the time to come there will be HTML stores, classic HTML/CSS Drupal Commerce solutions for a smaller business right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I would say the regular HTML stores or like full stack is the easier way to go. because you're working with Twig and PHP,
Mhm.
whereas with the JavaScript, you're now having to reinvent a lot of things. One example that's a challenge, and I've talked about this in previous times, is when you have let's say you have a t-shirt that has red, blue, and green, small, medium, large, you have to write in your JavaScript how to determine what variation they're purchasing based off those attributes, where we've already written that PHP code 4 years ago. And that's when I brought up that React Redux bindings, it's going to try to do some of that code in JavaScript. So definitely Drupal full stack with Commerce is a great, like, get it done. But once the needs of if the needs of the business require it off right away, I would go for decoupled, or it is something that you could slowly do progressive decoupling and then move to a fully decoupled solution. And just so everybody knows, when I say progressively decoupled, that's where Drupal's serving everything, but you put some components in like a decoupled fashion. One example of that is our cart flyout module. It adds a cart and then like the cart block and puts it into JavaScript. And that right there saves performance, but also gives like a zippier user experience.
Yep. I checked it out. It looks great. Sounds good. Cool.
And then I'll answer Jonathan's question quick. If the Commerce API is feature complete and features on the roadmap, it is not API complete. For instance, for checkout, you can rate your shipments, you can set the shipping address, but you can only collect payment through an offsite payment gateway such as PayPal Checkout or Klarna. Work needs to be done to support what we call on-site payment gateways, where like Authorize.net, Stripe, and Braintree, where when you give Braintree your credit card, they give us a token, and we need to build the API to receive that token and create the payment for you. But when it comes to cart management and fetching products, I would say it is API complete. And features are to be determined. We have basic wish list integration coming, and we will be working on more. And if you do have ideas or questions, every Tuesday and Thursday, we hold office hours in the Drupal Slack and Commerce channel at 11 a.m. GMT -2 or +2, and then at 11 a.m. Central, which is GMT -5. So that's where you can come ask us questions too.
Good.
With that, I think we're now officially at time.
I think we are on time. Yeah. And if anybody wants to hang out for a little bit here, that's fine. Or if you're going to be on the next session in this room, you can stay. I need to kind of hang out and wait for our next host, so I can give them host privilege.
Thanks, Bob.
You're all very
everybody, for
welcome.
coming.
Thank you, Matt and Ryan.